Welcome to the Kalispell Warhawks Dynasty, everybody. My name is MrHurriicane, and today we're going through the off-season that was streamed last week on my channel. There is a little bit at the end from after the stream as I took care of redshirting and the schedule, but today we're going to recap what actually happened in the 5th off-season of the series. This was an off-season I was really excited for because we already had what I thought was a great recruiting class, and there weren't going to be a lot of difficult decisions to make. I knew we had a lot of key seniors leaving, but I thought our recruiting class was very good, our depth at many areas is great, and we had a chance to strengthen things going into year 6. So let's first look at the bowl results for various teams. As we all know, Kalispell won their bowl game in the Hawaii Bowl against Marshall. There were many teams from our conference that made it to bowl games. Wyoming won theirs, Hawaii lost theirs, Utah State lost, Air Force won, and New Mexico lost theirs. By the way, if you want to watch the full off-season, it is on my channel, almost 3 hours. It was a very long stream, very fun one too. Your national champs going into year 6 are the Florida Gators, who dominated Tennessee by a score of 45-7. With 5 years in the books, we now have 3 consecutive successful years with at least 9 victories and a bowl win. We went out victorious in the final year of the original Warhawk era, and now look ahead to year 6. No coaching changes here for Kalispell. Players leaving is always one stage where something can throw you off, and that's exactly what happened with 5-star wide receiver Freddie Kimbrough deciding to transfer away from Kalispell to Texas State. Now, I planned to use Freddie this year and promised him that he would play in more than 9 games. I thought he'd have a role on this offense. And so, I offered, and he said, sorry, but I don't feel like I have a chance to make a difference on this team. Sounds like a man whose confidence is completely shaken. So Freddie Kimbrough is no longer a Kalispell Warhawk. When it came to the draft, no one left early, and nobody has yet been drafted from Kalispell. But for Freddie Kimbrough to leave, that was definitely something I did not expect. And we'll have to wait for the first 5-star prospect to ever play for Kalispell. Kimbrough was almost the first. He practiced, that was it. So on to recruiting now. We already had a recruiting class of 14 players with a lot of great talent at various positions. We addressed the offensive line like we failed to do in the past, and I feel much better about the next couple years and our offensive line situation. Players like Clay Hutchinson and Ryan Westergren could be big players for us down the line. We also recruited some versatile linebackers, Leo Thorne, Shane Monson, and Mario Townsend. We got a couple big playmakers in Boogie Turner at defensive tackle and Hayden John Charles at tight end. We addressed running back twice with Marcus Payne and Marty Belafonte, 2 players with big play potential, and even a quarterback dual threat from Oregon, Dustin Payment. So let's go on to the off-season recruiting. At the top of the list for a long time now has been Wesley MERRILL from Windsor Locks, Connecticut. One of the best middle linebackers in the country. We had to use the break the lock mechanic just to stay in this battle going into the off-season. And I was prepared to dump most of our points into his battle. We didn't have a lot of needs left to fill. I wanted some receivers. I wanted some of these other players that we were already close to getting, but I was focused on MERRILL. In the stream, I compared his skill set to that of Denzel Perryman for the Chargers, who is a fast, hard-hitting run stopper, but might struggle a bit in coverage and change of direction. But MERRILL is the kind of player this defense needs after graduating all of our starters, which includes our 4th Quentin Dunn, who comes off the bench in some pass rush situations. So I managed the points very slowly, as I tend to do. I also wanted to get strong safety Chris Baker and cornerback Jake Wolfe, but look at that. Well over 2/3 of our points going to Wesley MERRILL as we head into signing day to wrap up this recruiting class for Kalispell. One I was very confident would be one of our best. And here are the decisions that were made. Chris Baker, the strong safety from Arkansas, picks Kalispell, as does receiver Justin Payne. Getting a safety of Baker's caliber at this point was just an extra boost to our class. Unfortunately, we missed on Jake Wolfe, who's a really good cornerback. and he would have been tremendous to get after graduating our 2 top cornerbacks. Walter Garcia picks Ball State. Surprisingly, Kellen Childress picks Nebraska, and we miss on Kelechi Harley. But we do not miss on Wesley Merrill. Now, I put in about 8,000 more points than I had to, but how did I know that South Carolina and Mizzou were not going to be as aggressive as we were? I've seen some crazy things in these off seasons, but we got the 2 top players on our board to add even more depth to this recruiting class. It was lower ranked than I thought it would be at the 44th best, but we did have some really good 3-star players like Boogie Turner that I think were underrated. From there we look at position changes, and Glenn Hayes is a player I really want to figure out a fun role for him. He's fast and rangy, he can do all sorts of things. I see him playing some safety and some corner this year, kind of in a Jabril Peppers type of role. I also moved around some players along the offensive line, so we have a starting 5 that I think is optimal. And here are the training results of all the development for our players. J.R. Battle is now a 93 overall, as is Roscoe Sheridan. Could this finally be the year Kalispell sends players to the NFL draft? J.R. Battle is set to start for his 2nd year, this being his redshirt senior season. Accuracy up to 93, throw power to 87. Running back, we have 2 seniors to rely upon in Roscoe Sheridan and Corey Miller. Last year was all about seniors on defense. This year, it's seniors on offense. Corey Miller and Roscoe Sheridan have formed a terrific tandem, but I believe we recruited our next tandem this year. At receiver, we have Lamar Williams, Justin McClellan, and Ja'Cory Day, all seniors. We had no seniors along the offensive line last year, but this year we actually do. Thankfully, we have a lot more freshmen who can develop as well. Sean Gallagher kicks inside to play left guard this year. Andre Scott will play right guard. Andy Colbert at center. And then Bruce Franklin, the senior, at right tackle. The only senior on the offensive line that starts. On the defensive side, we do return a lot of defensive end talent, and there are some players I hope to get a lot more playing time this year. Marion Triplett is one, but Damian Whitmore's finesse move at 92 is just too good to keep on the bench. Plus, he's 6'8". I have to see how disruptive he can be this year. Where the main change is going to be is at linebacker, and the development here was key. Players like Alex Hardy, who have never played, are now going to be starters. Anthony Owens will play outside linebacker. We're fortunate we had a pretty good linebacker class here for recruiting. But keep in mind, we are about to have a starting linebacker core of 3 linebackers who have not played at all. We're going to have some change at corner with Chris Smith and Antone Slater graduating, so now you're going to see James Hampton, Glenn Hayes, and then some Scott Green and Jameel Butler. Shannon Evans now plays at free safety. Here are the cuts we had to make, and nothing too crazy here, just the walk-ons that were pretty low rated to get us down to a 70-man roster. There were no additional cuts I really wanted to make, so there are no open spots for transfers next year, but no one took advantage of that these last couple of years anyway. I also took a look at some players we could see this year, like defensive tackle Brock Oxendine. Number 1 quarterback recruit a couple of years ago, Jesse Heikkinen, will now start for UCLA. Freddie Kimbrough transfers to Texas State, where he is going to sit out a year. Jay Ewing is currently the top cornerback at Rutgers, one of our biggest recruiting misses of the series. Then there's Sidney John Charles, who chose to go to Minnesota over Kalispell, and he is still not going to be starting for some time, it would appear. He probably takes the starting job next year. Then Taquan Layton is also a little bit lower on the depth chart than you would expect. At Cal, Rafael One had a very productive first year as a player, and he should be very good for them this season. So let's head into practice now. Most of the remaining video is practice, and that's become one of the things I think most people are looking forward to in these off seasons. We've started spending a lot of time in these practices, and they mean something, because they're helping decide roster battles and depth chart positions, and this was no different. you'll see the linebackers here: Anthony Owens, number 50, Alex Hardy, number 54, and then the true freshman, this was big, Wesley Merrill, 55, I have playing outside linebacker right now. So, from the practice, what do we see? Well, early on, we had a focus here of Lamar Williams, and the drop issues are still very apparent. Lamar Williams was not the playmaker last year we hoped for because he wasn't reliable enough to get consistent snaps. Those ended up going to Justin McClellan, who didn't have a big year by any stretch, but he was more reliable and gave us a big play element that we hoped we would get from Lamar Williams. He has one more year of eligibility, but right now I see Williams' role being similar to last year until we have a reason to give him expanded snaps. McClellan is now your wide receiver 3. We're going to have Justin McClellan become the starter in the role of Sonny Archer from years past, and then Amonte Jones will be your number 1. After 4 years of Donnie Castillo and Rashad Williams, we now have Hayden John Charles. And here's a look at Hayden being covered by his brother, Kelly John Charles. Very cool moment there. John Charles, a true freshman, steps right into that number 1 tight end spot. The number 1 receiver, like I said, is Amonte Jones. And some suggested that I should redshirt him as he's a junior, and then I could save his years of eligibility for when receiver is a little bit thinner in a couple of years. I don't want to do that, partially because Jones has been really reliable. He's our best possession receiver, but also look at all the seniors on this team. I really want to make sure we're getting the most out of this year before we don't have Roscoe Sheridan, before we don't have J.R. Battle and Ja'Cory Day. So it's kind of an all-in scenario right now. I want to see how good this team can be. I did the opposite last year with James Hampton, and I'm glad I did. But in this case, I do think we have some possession receivers lower on the depth chart that could be prepared to replace Jones here in a couple of years. The name you want to keep in mind is Mike Harris, who has some of the best hands out of anybody who's come to this team. J.R. Battle looked pretty good in the practice, I thought. His accuracy was a bit sharper. His arm strength isn't much different, but I think he's ready for a big senior season. We return all of our starting linemen from last year, so I have higher expectations for the ground game and our pass protection. There's another play where Lamar Williams tries to make a great catch and can't get it done. Red zone practicing here was interesting as McClellan and Williams both made some plays. Not sure if that would have been considered a touchdown for Williams. He did kind of drop it there at the end. I do want to try working in Hayden John Charles as a red zone threat, although I don't think that he is quite as good as Donnie Castillo. Here was a nice play from Battle to McClellan, one I tried to replicate a number of times just because the ball placement made it possible. So if Battle's accuracy is better this year, we might have a better chance of hitting these pinpoint throws that we've kind of struggled with in the past. One thing we saw last year was just a lot of defensive dominance, whether it be in the trenches or in coverage, and that carried into this year as well. There were some great standouts. Number 92, Boogie Turner, had a number of disruptive pass rushes, but in the secondary, the guy who stole the show for me was Shannon Evans, and that was play of the practice right there. Somehow getting a foot down in bounds on a diving interception. Evans has exceptional range at safety. He did play a bit as a third safety a year ago. He's going to play the Jay Page role, and I'm hoping he brings that playmaking emphasis to the position that we didn't get with Page. Page was very good, multiple All-American awards, but I'm hoping to get more takeaways and big plays from Shannon Evans. You'll see other quarterbacks in here like the lefty Dustin Payment, as he's going to be redshirted this year, but if we ever wanted to go back to the style of offense we ran with Marquise Walker, Payments would make that possible, but we wouldn't have that conversation until next year at the earliest after J.R. Battle graduates. I was really impressed with Hayden John Charles. His catch in traffic was what stood out to me, and if he makes those tough catches early, that will be big for the offense. I also was impressed by Oscar Williams, who was not very good as a blocker last year, so I'm still uncertain about his role as tight end too. We're also a little bit away from seeing Marcus Payne and Marty Belafonte get any real playing time, but I had to get some practice with them, but the defense contained them for the most part. Marcus Payne is the most likely successor to Roscoe Sheridan on this roster. Dustin Payment threw the ball pretty well. I was concerned about his accuracy, but it didn't seem to be a big problem until it was on deep passes. We also had Ja'Cory Day play a little bit of quarterback. He does have a little throwing ability, and maybe we can get a Wildcat package going for Ja'Cory here in his senior year. He's never had the big season that I've been hoping for, but this year, more than ever, I want to get Ja'Cory Day the football, whether it be as a receiver or a runner, and based on how he handled things here, running option sometimes as the quarterback, we might have to design some interesting packages here to utilize his dynamic game-changing ability. I do think Ja'Cory is going to have a big season here in his last at Kalispell. Another standout for me on defense was cornerback James Hampton. He is very good at shadowing receivers, and I think his man cover ability is what will set him apart. He's one of the most intriguing athletes on this team, and I think that he's going to be a star early on. I also was impressed with Glenn Hayes. I wanted to see him play in the nickel role, and he excelled there, and his speed and athleticism is going to be an asset. In at quarterback, you see number 5, Justin Colbert, one of 2 quarterbacks we recruited last year. And Colbert is similar to J.R. Battle, a pocket passer with a strong arm. And Colbert is a redshirt freshman. Nice shake there by Corey Miller, breaking Kelly John Charles' ankles. But back to Colbert, this guy screams arm talent. From anywhere, he can make ridiculous throws. And they weren't always in stride to the receiver, but they were catchable. And you'll see his deep balls through Ja'Cory Day. So this really made me think about maybe we keep this offense for the long term. If Colbert continues to develop and he can do more of this in the future, like think about it, he's still a freshman and this is the kind of throw he's capable of. It's obnoxious. And his play in the practice made me think that maybe he is the primary backup to J.R. Battle instead of Brett Mitchell. I think that if there comes a situation where I have to decide who's going to play, it might have to be based on the defense. And if the offensive line can hold tough, maybe Colbert is the backup. But hopefully we don't have to make that decision. But I just was so impressed with Justin Colbert. He isn't very mobile, but he does have more speed than J.R. Battle. But these deep balls were mesmerizing. Ja'Cory Day sure likes them, I know that. I still want to do an additional practice stream with these players. I haven't done it yet because I've had some internet issues these last couple days, otherwise I would have already had it done. If that gets taken care of here in the near future, I'll be streaming again and you'll see more of Justin Colbert because I need to see if he is the real deal. Now let's move on to the schedule and red shirts. We are going to face Rice to open the season. Jesse Heikkinen and UCLA will be our opponents in week 2, and then in week 3 we travel to Louisville. This is a tougher non-conference schedule than last year. Here is Rice's roster, which is very similar to ours in terms of overall rating at the top. UCLA, much tougher competition for us than we're used to, and we're going to see the young Jesse Heikkinen. At Louisville, I think they also compare very well to us. If I had to just summarize this non-conference schedule, it's 2 even matchups and one that's a step up for Kalispell. Now on to the roster and red shirts. We do redshirt Dustin Payment. At running back, Marcus Payne and Marty Belafonte are both red-shirted. At receiver, it's just Justin Payne, the possession receiver, another player that could take over for Amonte Jones. I didn't redshirt any of the tight ends. I might need all 3 of them. Ryan Westergren gets redshirted, as does Clay Hutchinson, who has very good potential, I think. And then Noah Manuai. Anthony Hicks, the pass rusher, gets redshirted, but nobody else along the defensive line, including Boogie Turner, who will be a day 1 starter. We do redshirt Mario Townsend and Leo Thorne. Wesley Merrill will play, and Shane Monson is also redshirted. At cornerback, it's Justin Garcia, and at safety, it is Chris Baker. but if someone gets hurt, he will be obviously no longer red-shirted. Here is the depth chart at key positions with Monte Jones, McClellan, and Day, your top 3 receivers. Hayden John-Charles, tight end 1. You're going to see Damian Whitmore and Mario Triplett quite a bit. I already have formation subs that get those players on the field. Nate Graham and Boogie Turner will start at defensive tackle. Wesley Merrill on the outside, Alex Hardy in the middle. And on the opposite side, we have Anthony Owens. In the secondary, Malcolm Tyson, James Hampton, Glenn Hayes, and Jameel Butler. I forgot to mention him. Butler looked outstanding in the practice, and I want to get him some playing time somehow if I can. John Charles and Evans, of course, at safety. And there are your Year 6 Kalispell Warhawks. What do you think of this team and their prospects going into another big year? We spend so much time building cores on defense, cores on offense, and now we have a very experienced core of offensive playmakers with some new youth on defense. I am excited for this year, and especially the offense to hopefully reach their potential with players like J.R. Battle, Roscoe Sheridan, and Ja'Cory Day playing their last years at Kalispell. Please leave your feedback down below in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and also smash that like button if you are stoked for Year 6. Kalispell Dynasty continues on soon with the Year 6 opener against Rice. Have a great day.